During the Super Bowl final, my husband, Marcus, suddenly suggested we make a bet. Watching the game reach its halftime mark, he said casually, "If the Eagles win, we get a divorce. What do you say?" The Eagles were leading by a landslide. They were bound to take home the championship ring tonight. I stared blankly at the TV screen, my mind drifting back to an Instagram post I had seen just this afternoon, uploaded by Marcus's secretary, Hailey. Mr. Marcus said that if the Eagles win tonight, he will finally take our relationship public. Perfect timing, because I have a little surprise waiting for him too. The surprise Hailey mentioned was a photo of a positive pregnancy test showing she was 2 months along. Remembering the sweet, pampering messages Marcus had left under her post to make her happy, I felt an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. With only 1 minute left on the clock before the game ended, I spoke in a quiet voice. "Okay, I'll take that bet." The game ended. Around us, the screams and cheers of our friends watching the game were deafening. Only Marcus and I sat in a silence that felt completely out of place. Marcus froze, looking at me in surprise. I looked at the final score on the screen. Then I said softly, "You won." He was always going to win this bet. I didn't want to fight it anymore. Marcus, I agreed to the divorce. In our 5-year marriage war, he had finally won. On the drive back, Hailey sent Marcus a Snapchat voice note, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Marcus, the Eagles actually won. Does this mean we can finally tell everyone about us?" The voice note played out loud by accident. Every single word fell clearly into my ears. Marcus instinctively glanced at me through the rearview mirror, but he only saw me staring out the window, completely expressionless. He cleared his throat. "It was just a random bet before the game started. I was just trying to make her happy." "But..." Marcus paused, his tone turning somewhat indifferent. "Since I've been with her for so long, I guess it really is time to marry her." I gave a quiet "Have your lawyer draft the papers." Seemingly not expecting me to agree so easily, Marcus was slightly taken aback. Then he said, "There's no need to rush it like this." I met his gaze calmly. "We wouldn't want to delay your big announcement. It's better to sign the papers as soon as possible." After all, she's been waiting quite eagerly. I wasn't lying. Hailey had been with him for 3 years, but she had never gotten the chance to show him off publicly. As long as Marcus and I were married, he couldn't bear to let Hailey be labeled a homewrecker. Marcus stared at my face, trying to read my expression, but I was too exhausted. I just closed my eyes. I didn't want to say another word. As we neared the house, Marcus suddenly said, "The power went out at Hailey's place. She's terrified of the dark. I need to go over and keep her company." "Okay, just drop me off at the next intersection," I said, not even looking at him. I was already too used to this. Marcus hesitated. Only after I stepped out of the car did he say, "I might not come back tonight." I nodded, my face completely calm. "Okay." After Marcus's car drove away, I stood on the sidewalk for a while. My phone buzzed. It was a Snapchat message from my best friend, Amber. "Did you and Marcus leave early? I can't find you guys at the party." Marcus had hesitated for a long time about coming to this game tonight. Maybe out of guilt, or maybe remorse, he had still ended up coming with me. I replied to Amber, "Yeah, we're getting a divorce." Amber replied instantly, "Because of Hailey? Why won't that girl just disappear? She's just a secretary." Has Marcus lost his mind? Maybe he had. I didn't know when things had started to change between Marcus and me. When did it begin? Probably when his work got too busy, and we talked less and less. He stopped sharing the funny little details of his day with me. His replies to my messages took longer and longer. Strangely, the thought of divorce didn't make me sad. Instead, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. We had known each other for 8 years and been married for 5. This marriage, which had kept me awake for countless painful nights, was finally coming to an end. Just then, a voice note from Marcus came through. "Go to bed early." Marcus always had this habit of slapping me first, and then giving me a sweet treat. I was used to this way of living, too. Back home, I collapsed onto the couch, feeling drained. I stared numbly at the empty house. I don't know how much time passed before my phone lit up again. It was a notification for an Instagram update from Hailey. I clicked on it. It was her relationship hard launch post. "Congrats to the Eagles for winning the championship. Mr. Marcus won his bet. Family of 3, finally together." The photo showed 2 hands overlapping on top of a pregnancy report. My hand automatically drifted to my own stomach. My own medical report from yesterday's checkup was still sitting in my purse. 4 weeks pregnant. It was my second pregnancy. I lowered my eyes, exited Hailey's post, and pulled up my lawyer's contact details. "Please draft the divorce agreement for me as quickly as possible." Marcus didn't come home for 3 consecutive days. Hailey posted on her Instagram constantly. It didn't look like she was sharing her life. It felt like she was specifically targeting me. Amber was absolutely furious after seeing Hailey's posts. Her voice over the phone was shaking with anger on my behalf. Who does this Hailey think she is? She's literally just a side chick. Why is she acting so proud? Is Marcus blind? What does she have that you don't? I had asked myself that question many times. Was Marcus bad to me? No. He remembered all my preferences, my birthday, and every single anniversary. When I was sick, he would stay up all night taking care of me. If I casually mentioned wanting to go on a trip, he would drop everything to go with me. Whatever I wanted, he gave me. Could I say he never loved me? No, I couldn't. I had seen the way his eyes used to light up whenever he looked at me. I took a sip of water and looked out the window. Who knows? But it doesn't matter anymore. The divorce papers were ready. I was just waiting for Marcus to come back and sign them. I smiled to comfort Amber. All right, let's just enjoy our dinner. Don't let them ruin your mood. When I texted Marcus, it was Hailey who picked up the FaceTime call. She had a sweet, mocking smile on her face. Chloe, Marcus is making a prenatal meal for me right now. I'll let him know you called when he's done. A prenatal meal? Marcus used to nag me about being too skinny and not eating right. To make sure I got enough nutrition, he used to cook almost every single meal for me himself. But after he met Hailey, he never had the heart for it again. His mind and eyes were now completely filled with Hailey. Before I could even reply, Hailey sent me a photo. It was a shot of Marcus from behind, wearing an apron and working busy in the kitchen. Chloe, Marcus is really stretched thin right now. I told him what you said, and he knows about it now. Marcus came back very late that night. Seeing me sitting on the couch, his hand paused as he took off his coat. Why aren't you asleep yet? He acted as if nothing had happened. His tone was warm and familiar. It's really late. My voice was flat. I was waiting for you. Marcus walked over, and I pushed the signed divorce papers toward him. I've already signed. Since you cheated, we aren't splitting the assets 50-50ths. I've had all our marital property calculated, including the money you spent on Hailey. I get 70%, you get 30%. Marcus frowned. Chloe, aren't you being a bit too greedy? Greedy? I actually felt it wasn't enough. I didn't want to argue with him. You cheated. Me taking this much is only fair. After a long silence, Marcus was the first to look away. He sat down, grabbed a pen, and signed his name on the papers. I took my copy immediately. Marcus opened his mouth to say something, but I turned around and walked upstairs without looking back. Halfway up the stairs, I stopped. I turned around to remind him. We need to file this at the family court tomorrow morning. After all, there is still a 30-day waiting period. Marcus frowned deeply. He opened his mouth. Are you really in that much of a rush? I finished his sentence for him. The sooner we file, the sooner your child stops being an illegitimate kid. Isn't that what you want? Marcus froze. Seeing how calm I was, he hesitated before speaking. You know about the baby? Marcus let out a breath and tried to explain. I only found out today what Hailey meant by her surprise. I honestly didn't expect her to be pregnant. There was nothing left to explain. I ignored him and was about to continue upstairs. Suddenly, a wave of intense nausea hit my throat. I covered my mouth and rushed into the bathroom. Marcus followed me in, looking frantic. He knelt down beside me, rubbing my back. Why are you throwing up so badly? I wiped my mouth and flushed the toilet. Do we need to go to the hospital? Marcus asked. I didn't look at him. No. He hesitated for a moment. If you're not feeling well, we can put off the divorce for a bit. I took a large step past him and walked out. There's no need to delay. Back in my room, I pulled that crumpled pregnancy report from my purse. 2 months ago, Marcus had come home drunk and slept with me, whispering Hailey's name. I hadn't expected to get pregnant from that. I paused, balled up the report, and threw it into the trash can. The next morning at 9, Marcus and I met outside the family court. After filing the papers, we had to wait out the 30-day waiting period before we could officially get our divorce certificate. I can drive you back, Marcus said. I had taken an Uber here this morning. A bad car accident years ago had left me with severe trauma, and I hadn't driven since. Just as he finished speaking, his phone rang. It was Hailey. I kept my head down, opening my Uber app. Hailey, what's wrong? Marcus kept his voice low, but Hailey's voice was loud enough to leak through the receiver. Marcus, how did it go with Chloe? Marcus told her about the 30-day waiting period. Hailey giggled. Okay, are you coming over later? The baby and I really miss you. Marcus glanced at me. He hesitated, but that hesitation only lasted 3 seconds before he agreed. Okay. Marcus could never say no to Hailey. If Hailey wanted to see him, he would go. Hanging up, Marcus looked at me with some embarrassment. About Hailey. I cut him off, not even raising my head from my phone. Don't worry about it. Go to her. My Uber had just arrived. I didn't look back at Marcus as I opened the door and got into the car. On my way home, Amber sent me a link to a social media post. I clicked on it and realized it was Hailey's. Amber's voice notes were practically vibrating with rage. Chloe, this Hailey is absolutely shameless. What does she mean by, there was no love left in your marriage? What does she mean by, the one who isn't loved is the real homewrecker? Does she have no shame? I tried to call her out in the comments, but she blocked me. And Marcus, that spineless jerk. Amber was truly hurting for me. By the end of her voice note, her voice was cracking. I comforted her before clicking back to read the post. The comment section was already flooded with thousands of replies. I saw the thread where Amber had argued with Hailey. Many internet users were dragging Hailey in the replies. As I scrolled down, I saw Marcus's account had left a comment. Our marriage was already broken, and we are currently in the middle of divorce proceedings. My girlfriend is not a homewrecker. I stared at that sentence for a very long time. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. What a beautifully worded statement. Suddenly, I remembered the promise Marcus made the day he proposed. He had held up 3 fingers, looking up at me with tears in his eyes. In front of all our friends he swore, "If I, Marcus, ever do anything to hurt Chloe, may God strike me down on the spot." Back then, I never believed Marcus could ever betray me. The moment he slipped the engagement ring onto my finger, his eyes were red as he kissed the back of my hand. "You've finally gone from my girlfriend to my fiancé. My heart can finally rest easy." Unfortunately, his promises were worthless. Changing my status from girlfriend to fiancé, and then to legal wife, didn't protect me at all. He had still betrayed me. I gave Marcus's comment a like and closed the app. Once I got home, I started packing my things. Marcus had designed this house himself, but I had handpicked all the furniture. I had too many things, and they ended up filling 3 large suitcases. I didn't know when Marcus had come back home. Passing by the master bedroom, he stopped. His brows knitted together. "You're moving out right now?" I lifted my suitcase, not sparing him a glance. "This house belongs to you. If I don't move out, how is she supposed to move in?" "I never planned on having Hailey move in here," Marcus said. "She's perfectly fine living at her place. You don't have to rush to move out. Chloe, you don't need to throw a tantrum like this. You agreed to the divorce too." My hands paused. I wanted to laugh. He had already won the bet he was destined to win, so why was he still acting like this? Marcus had wanted this divorce for a long time. I was the one who had been holding on too tightly. But seeing his protective attitude toward Hailey made me realize how tired I was. I was so tired that letting go actually felt like a relief. I looked at Marcus. "I'm not throwing a tantrum. I'm just making room for her." Marcus remained silent, his mind seemingly elsewhere. Suddenly, he asked me, "Chloe, don't you find this exhausting?" He pinched the bridge of his nose. "We lost that spark we had when we were dating a long time ago. I'm used to having you around, but I can't find that excitement anymore. With Hailey, I actually feel like I'm in a relationship again. Every day, you do the exact same things. Your whole life just revolves around me. Don't you get sick of it?" He closed his eyes. "Chloe, I got tired of this kind of life a long time ago." I stared at Marcus. Suddenly, I couldn't find any words to say. I had imagined many reasons, but I never expected that Marcus was simply bored of our life. He was used to my presence, yet I could no longer stir any feelings in him. With one casual sentence, he had completely shattered everything we had built. I suddenly laughed. "You're right. It is pretty exhausting." Marcus was silent for a moment. "Divorce is the best outcome for both of us." Marcus walked back to his room. I sat on the bed, staring into space for a long time. The next morning, I hired movers to take my luggage away. Just as I reached the door, Marcus called out to me. His tone sounded relieved. "If you ever need help with anything in the future, feel free to ask." I didn't reply and walked straight out. On the very night I moved out, Hailey moved in. She even posted a status on Snapchat. It was just a simple new home caption alongside a photo of her suitcases. Just a day ago, Marcus had said he wouldn't let Hailey move in. The second I left, he couldn't wait to bring her over. Hailey even sent me a provocative text message. "Chloe, Marcus said that since I'm pregnant, I should live with him so he can take better care of me. Otherwise, if something bad happens like when you were pregnant, it would be awful. Since you and Marcus are getting divorced anyway, you won't mind, right?" My hand instinctively moved to my stomach. In our 3rd year of marriage, I had gotten pregnant. Later, when I went to Marcus's office, I walked in on him kissing Hailey. Because of the shock, I tripped, fell, and suffered a miscarriage. Marcus never mentioned Hailey after that incident, and he spent 2 weeks taking care of me. I lowered my eyes and typed back, "Does being a homewrecker make you feel that proud?" 5 minutes later, Marcus called. "Hailey is just childish. You don't need to take her words to heart, and there's no need to argue with her about her moving in." I thought about it. She's a pregnant girl living alone, which isn't safe, so I brought her here to take care of her. I laughed. Hearing my laugh, Marcus went silent. "Don't worry, I won't lower myself to her level. She's just a child, so take good care of her. Also, you don't need to explain anything to me. We are divorced." Without giving Marcus a chance to speak, I hung up. My hand rested on my stomach. Without any hesitation, I opened my phone and booked an appointment for an abortion. The day the waiting period ended, Marcus and I finalized our divorce. Walking out of the courthouse, Marcus called my name. I didn't answer, nor did I stop my pace. I got straight into my Uber and left. As soon as Marcus got home, he received a text message from an unknown number. He frowned as he opened and zoomed in on the picture. When he saw the words clearly, his entire body went rigid. The phone in Marcus's hand felt suddenly, impossibly heavy. The digital screen of his phone glowed with a harsh, white light in the quiet living room of the villa. He zoomed in on the attached image, his eyes scanning the black, printed letters of the medical report. Orenburg Women's Clinic. Patient Chloe Vance. Procedure: surgical. Termination of pregnancy. Gestation 6 weeks. Date of procedure: November 14th. That was yesterday. The very day before they had stood outside the family court, signing the final papers that dissolved their 5-year marriage. The phone slipped from his fingers, hitting the polished marble floor with a sharp cracking sound. The screen went dark, but the black text seemed to remain, branded into his retinas, glowing behind his eyelids with a toxic, burning heat. Marcus? Hailey's voice came from the master bedroom, sweet, high-pitched and dripping, with that delicate, childlike dependency he had once found so refreshing. He was wearing a silk robe that Chloe had bought, her small feet tucked into the custom slippers I had left behind. Marcus, who was that? She pouted, walking into the hallway, her hand resting over her slightly rounded belly. The baby is hungry. You promised to make me that beef stew tonight. Why are you just standing there? Marcus slowly turned his head to look at her. He looked at her perfect, symmetrical face, her professionally styled hair, and her demanding, bright eyes. And for the first time in 3 years, the excitement he had felt with her did not make his chest tighten with passion. It made him sick to his stomach. Marcus. Hailey's smile faltered, her hand dropping from her stomach as she saw the terrifying, icy blankness in his gray eyes. What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like that? Chloe was pregnant, Marcus said. His voice was raw, stripped of all its calm corporate authority, sounding like a dry rattle from the back of his throat. Hailey's eyes widened, a flicker of panic crossing her face before she quickly masked it with a soft, dismissive pout. Oh, is that what she told you? Marcus, she's just trying to blackmail you. She probably forged a document to make you feel guilty. It was an official medical discharge from the state clinic. Hailey, Marcus interrupted, his voice dropping to a register so low it made her freeze. And she didn't send it to me. Her lawyer did, along with the final liquidation receipt of our joint savings. He stepped closer, his shadow completely engulfing her in the narrow hallway. She didn't want a single cent of my money, he whispered. She returned the salary card. She returned the house keys. And she removed my child from her body, because she didn't want a single, solitary connection to me left in this world. Marcus, please. Hailey took a step back, her hands shaking. The baby is your real child. Chloe was old, she was boring. Get out, Marcus said. What? Get out of my house, Hailey, he repeated, his voice cold, flat, and entirely dead. Before I have the security guards drag you and your bags onto the street. The 30-day waiting period had ended, and with it, the life Marcus had built for 5 years had completely collapsed. He didn't go to the office the next morning. He spent the day in his study, the heavy velvet drapes closed to shut out the pale winter sun, his laptop open as he reviewed the home security feeds. He went back to the recordings from last Saturday, the night of the bidding document incident. On the screen, the living room was quiet. My mother had been in the study, carrying a warm cup of ginseng tea for her father, her movements slow and careful. She hadn't touched the desk. She hadn't even looked at the filing cabinet. But 10 minutes later, after my mother left, the camera recorded Hailey entering the room. She was wearing a faded, cheap dress she had bought to look poor and hardworking, in front of my grandparents. She had walked straight to the desk, pulled the bidding document from the middle drawer, and slid it beneath the heavy wool rug in the corner of the room. She had then walked out, a smug, triumphant smile touching her lips. Marcus stared at the screen, a low, guttural groan of agonizing regret escaping his throat. He covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking as he sat in the dark of his study. He had believed her. He had believed that his quiet, stable wife was a greedy, untrustworthy partner who was bored of their marriage, while the girl who was systematically destroying his family from within was an innocent child who needed protection. The phone on his desk rang. It was his personal assistant, Leo. Sir. Leo's voice came through on the first ring, sounding tentative. We've checked the flight registries for the last 48 hours. A ticket was purchased under Chloe's maiden name. A one-way flight to Seattle. She boarded the plane at 9 this morning. Seattle, Marcus muttered, his hand clenching around his pen until the plastic casing cracked. Yes, sir. And we also checked her corporate files. She accepted the regional transfer to the Seattle office 2 weeks ago. Her salary and her title have already been finalized by their headquarters. She has officially left our division. Marcus didn't answer. He slowly hung up the phone. He looked at the empty desk where my mother's small, handcrafted pencil holder used to sit, the one she had made for his 31st birthday. He had thrown it in the trash when Hailey moved in, claiming it was unprofessional and messy. Now his desk was clean, professional, and completely empty. The winter in Seattle was cold, but it was a clean, crisp cold that smelled of salt, wet earth, and pine needles. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in the Queen Anne district. It had a large window that faced the gray, restless waters of the Puget Sound, and more importantly, my commute to the new office was a 5-minute walk through a quiet park. My new team was professional, sharp, and entirely respectful of my space. My boss, Marcus, was an older man who had worked in the Seattle branch for 20 years. On my first day, he handed me a warm cup of coffee and a thick file of local clients. "We heard about your work in Orenburg, Chloe," he said, his voice deep and warm. "You closed $40 million in accounts last year. We're glad to have you. Here, take your time settling in." "Thank you, Marcus," I smiled. For the first time in 5 years, my hands and feet didn't get cold at night. I had bought a high-end ergonomic chair for my desk, and I spent my evenings cooking simple, fresh meals in my quiet kitchen, undisturbed by the constant dread of a vibrating phone. I didn't think about the past. I didn't think about the gardenias, the automated scripts, or the blood on the clinic floor. I was finally, truly successful, and I had done it entirely on my own. The physical trauma of the car accident was still there. My lower back would still ache slightly whenever a heavy rainstorm rolled off the sound, but without the constant weight of Marcus's coldness, my body was slowly, quietly healing. On Friday evenings, I would walk down to the local library, borrow a few historical biographies, and spend the weekend reading by the window, watching the white ferry boats drift across the black water. I had built a life of my own, with my own hands, and it was a life that I was proud of. The news of the madness of Marcus Miller eventually leaked to the public. In high society, secrets of that magnitude are impossible to keep forever, especially when a senior research director suddenly begins making catastrophic errors on his lab simulations and misses 3 consecutive board meetings. He had been terminated for cause by the end of November, his name blacklisted from every major research facility in Carmoria. He didn't care. He had spent his days and nights in a frantic, desperate search of the country. He had hired private investigators, spent hundreds of thousands of his personal savings, and checked every hospital and clinic in the region. But Chloe, the girl who had stayed by his side for 8 years, the one who had eaten his cold porridge and slept in his guest room without a single complaint, had completely disappeared from his world. One evening, in his cold, empty villa, he tried to hold Hailey's hand. They were sitting on the expensive leather sofa, the rain drumming violently against the glass drapes. He reached out and wrapped his fingers tightly around her palm, hoping to feel that old, wild passion that had once made him throw away his marriage. But the moment their skin met, he felt nothing. Her hand was cold, her fingers stiff, her mind completely focused on the diamond catalog she was browsing on her tablet. Her skin contact no longer transmitted that raw, desperate adoration into his brain. He realized, with a terrifying, bone-deep certainty, that her love was never about him. It was about his money, his status, and the security his name could buy. He had thrown away a woman who loved him for who he was, just to buy a parasitical doll who loved him for what he owned. The winter rain of Seattle was soft, turning the asphalt of the streets into a dark, shimmering mirror under the yellow street lamps. I was leaving my office at 6 p.m., my trench coat pulled tight around my neck, my black umbrella held steady against the wind. The street was quiet, the yellow lights of the transit station casting long, dancing shadows across the wet gravel. As I approached my car, a tall, dark figure stepped out from the shadow of the brick building. It was Marcus. He wasn't wearing his custom suit. He was wearing a wet, rumpled trench coat, his hair plastering against his forehead, his face pale and sunken, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He looked like a man who had been wandering the streets for hours in the storm. He stood in front of my car door, his body shaking with the cold. "Chloe," he whispered, his voice raw, broken, and completely stripped of his usual strict, academic pride. "Please, just let me talk to you. Just for 5 minutes." "I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Miller," I said, my hand reaching for the door handle. "Move aside. I'm going home." "No." He fell to his knees on the rain-slicked pavement, his hands reaching out to grab the hem of my coat, his forehead pressing against my leather boots. "Please, Chloe. Just let me hold your hand. I don't care if my palms are sweaty." I don't care about the bacteria. I don't care about anything. Just touch me once. Tell me you still remember. I looked down at the man kneeling in the mud at my feet, his hands clutching my shoes like a beggar waiting for scraps. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, and no pain. I don't need to hold your hand, Marcus, to know what's in your heart, I said, my voice quiet and cool over the sound of the rain. But if you want to see the truth here. I reached out, my fingers wrapping tightly around his wet, trembling wrist. The transmission was instantaneous, but this time my mind did not project an image of Hailey, or me, or anyone else. In my mind, there was only a vast, empty vacuum. His heart was a black, dead star, a cold, hollow space filled with nothing but the dry, dusty ashes of his own regrets. He had destroyed his own ability to love, his pride and his greed having eaten his soul from the inside out until there was absolutely nothing left. I pulled my hand back, reached into my pocket, and pulled out a wet wipe, carefully wiping my fingers before tossing it into the gutter. You're empty, Marcus, I said, my voice carrying the quiet peace of the winter rain. There is no one in your heart. Not even yourself. You're just a ghost. Marcus stared at his own hand, his face turning entirely gray under the yellow street lamp. He let out a soft, broken sob, his head dropping back into the mud. As his hands went limp. No. He wept. No, Chloe, please. I climbed into my car, shut the door, and locked it. I started the engine, the windshield wipers clearing the rain with a steady, rhythmic swoosh, and drove away into the bright, clean streets of the city, leaving his shadow behind in the dark. The spring in Seattle arrived with a brilliant, golden clarity. The Vance Atelier had completed the regional project, the opening gala attended by the country's most respected corporate leaders and architects. I stood near the grand entrance, wearing a simple white silk dress, my hair loose around my shoulders, my skin glowing under the warm lights. A handsome, quiet man named Dr. Marcus Thorne, a research scientist from the local university, walked up to me, a glass of champagne in his hand. He had a warm, gentle smile, his eyes filled with a quiet, respectful admiration. Congratulations on the opening, Chloe, he said, his voice deep and warm. The space is magnificent. Thank you, Marcus, I smiled. He reached out, his hand gently, tentatively wrapping around my palm to shake it. My hand was warm, dry, and entirely steady. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation from my fingertips transmit his inner world into my brain. In my mind, there was a quiet, sunlit library filled with books and green plants. Near the window sat a woman in a white dress, sketching. It was me. But this time, I didn't pull my hand back. I didn't feel the cold panic or the urge to run away. I opened my eyes, looked into his honest, warm eyes, and squeezed his hand back, letting his warmth fill my palm. The red carpet was behind me, the corporate wars were over, and the man who had proposed to me for an inheritance was gone, leaving only the quiet, beautiful dawn of a life that was finally, truly mine. I took a deep, clean breath and walked into the warm light of my future.